Thank you so much for the panelists joining me today. This is the Personal Development Track Startup Stories, Unique Founders Sharing Their Unique Perspectives and Entrepreneurship panel. We've got some amazing rock stars here, really doing some cool stuff, very different, but I think the underlying theme is that they are people of passion and drive and grit, and ones that I want to make sure get their knowledge out into the world. So if you're okay with it, everyone, I'd love to start introducing you. If you wouldn't mind putting in all of your contact information, links to your companies, ways people can find you there in the chat. And anyone there in the chat that wants to put any questions, we'll be answering those throughout the session as well at the end. Let me start with Ms. Tinsley. I see you already putting stuff out there. I love it. Ms. Tinsley Merrill is the co-founder and chief revenue officer of Pear Technology. Born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia, Tinsley graduated from SMU with a double major in public relations and corporate communications. Prior to launching Pear, Tinsley served on the at Reward Style, the world's first content monetization platform for top-tier digital influencers and global brands. In addition to her influencer marketing background, Tinsley served on the initial launch team at Bumble, where she attended SMU. She worked with one of the first co-creation startups, the Ladmere Group, in London, England. As an avid traveler and experimentalist, Tinsley has always craved experiences over things. And after joining Pear, she realized the opportunity to create a new way for influencers to monetize outside of the traditional channels through experiences and events. Her responsibilities there include launching an experimental monetization program, kickstarting Pear's College Ambassador Program, onboarding new brands and partners, and gearing strategic marketing efforts towards the young millennial and post-millennial demographics. Thank you so much, Tinsley. I know you have a ton of amazing things happening in your life, and I'm so excited for you to share more about how you have gotten here and where you're going to go.
Yeah, hi, everyone. Thanks for having me.
We're excited. Next up, I'd love to introduce Mr. Brian Morrison. Brian, he is the co-founder and CEO of Proxy, a remote chief of staff organization that serves executives in some of the most exciting challenger brands in the country. Brian is also an adjunct professor teaching digital marketing at SMU's Termelin Advising Institute and the Cox School of Business. Prior to teaching and starting Proxy, he served in many high-level executive roles, such as president of SaaS personalization provider, Nectar OM, and president of Digital and Omnicom's largest consumer engagement agency, The Marketing Arm. He has led the turnaround of America's first mobile marketing firm, Ipsh. Am I saying that correctly, Brian?
Yeah, it's Ipsh.
Ipsh, and president and head of sales and marketing for CRM agency Javelin Direct. He has been a successful entrepreneur, and throughout most of his career, he has maintained a consultancy called Brand Ops, focusing on the people, processes, and systems related to operationalizing brands. Brian also serves on company boards and represents several technology service providers, consultancies, and agencies. He's worked with a wide range of businesses and is a graduate of Iowa State University. Brian was the former president of both American Advertising Federation's Dallas chapter and the Dallas Ad2 organization. Brian has been a huge part of my inspiration for getting great people together. So thank you so much, Brian. I really appreciate your time here today.
Yeah, thrilled to be here. Thanks. I'm going to work on editing my profile for the future. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Perfect. Ms. Lindsay Harper is a associate professor of OBGYN for Texas A&M College of Medicine, a fellow American Cross. A fellow of the American Congress of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, and a fellow of the International Society of the Study for Women's Health. She is the founder of Rosie, a women's health technology company that connects women who have sexual health concerns with hope, community, and research-backed solutions. She has been named Forbes' top 53 women disrupting healthcare, People's Newspapers 20 Under 40, a top innovator in North Texas for 2020, and a DBJ Top Woman in Technology honoree. Lindsay, you're doing awesome work, and I'm so excited to have you talk more today with us.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am, of course. Faraj, let's talk to you, my friend. He is the co-founder of Canna, an employee onboarding and management system for licensed cannabis farms and dispensaries. A UI UX designer, product owner, and marketplace geek, he previously worked as an early employee at 3 startups, VR, experimental marketing, and drones, before co-founding his first venture, Fade. He was a barber booking marketplaces that launched in DFW and grew to early revenue. I've seen, you take Fade, and now you are into Canna, and I'm so excited to hear more about what you are doing, and excited to see about how your journey through the multiple industries really has gotten you to where you're at today.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to wrap.
Yes, absolutely. Let's talk about Martin. Martin Martinez is the managing director of the Founders Institute, a global stage accelerator program that spans over 200 cities and 65 countries globally. He oversees events, operations, partnerships, and graduate success across the chapters in Austin and Houston, with additional chapters launching late in 2020. In 2017, the FI program has launched over 65 Texas-based companies with graduates collectively raising over $1 million in pre-seed investment to date. Martin is also the founder and president of A Player Media, a creative live and virtual events company headquartered in Austin, Texas. He's the graduate of University of Texas in Austin and began his career as an early Austin employee at Facebook before moving to Google to launch marketplace products for small to medium-sized businesses. A serial entrepreneur, he's founded and exited 3 companies, produced profile events in the state and several industries, and he serves as an advisor to multiple conferences and festivals. He's passionate about supporting early-stage entrepreneurs, creating memorable event experiences, working with creatives and performing artists, and all things South by Southwest. Martin has been a huge help to me getting connected throughout Texas, and I'm really excited for you to be here.
Oh, I'm really honored to be here as well, Molly. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you to Dallas Startup Week. Been watching a lot of things going on already. It's been a great time, and I'm just honored to be a part of this with all you brilliant people.
I love it. Thank you. We'll finish up with Mr. Will Coleman. Will is the CEO and founder of Alto, a new ride-sharing service based in Dallas, Texas, focused on redefining the ride-sharing experience. Will is a former partner at McKinsey & Company, where he led their B2C travel practice to build disruptive strategies into the marketplace. For more than 10 years, he has supported airline, hotel, and car rental clients on commercial and operations strategy development and implementation. Will is a proud graduate of the University of Texas, and also a Dallas native. Will, I know that you have been a very busy guy, and I am so excited to hear more from you on kind of how you got Alto to where it is today, and what things you're looking forward to within the company.
Thanks, Molly. Also, good to be here. Thanks so much for having me. This is fun.
Thank you, guys. And yes, absolutely. I'm really looking forward to just having a casual conversation. I will direct some questions to you guys, but if you feel the need to resonate with an answer, please feel free to jump ahead and share your thoughts with us. That's why you're here. Keep an eye over in the chat. There'll be some people popping in with questions and things like that. Make sure, if there's any links you'd like to be sent, I'm happy to get that in the chat for you as well. Perfect. I wanted the first question really kind of as an open-ended question for you guys. And we can start with Tinsley. Did you think you were going to be an entrepreneur as a young person? I probably want to hear from all of you on this. And if you did you think you'd be doing it in the way you're doing it today? Did you think it was everything you thought it was?
Yeah, so I have an interesting background in the way that I feel like most entrepreneurs that I talk to didn't think they would be entrepreneurs and be doing what they were doing today. My background really comes from so many strong female entrepreneurs, whether it was my sister who started the Acola Project, whether it was Whitney who started Bumble, who I got to learn about at SMU and work with them, whether it was Amber who started Reward Style in Dallas, and being able to work with her and learn from her. I was always inspired by women entrepreneurs kind of finding a problem and creating a solution for it. So I think a part of me always wanted to be in the entrepreneurial space. Did I think I would actually be finding a company? No, I always wanted to work with the really fun, trendy companies, have them grow. But when the opportunity presented itself with Pear, I've seen so many times when an opportunity comes, you have to dive in head first or you're going to miss it. And so for me and what I'm doing, it was an opportunity presented itself. I could really create a solution for it. And that's really why I dived into Pear and then eventually Her Story and what we're doing now. So it wasn't strategic, but I did always think I would definitely be in this space.
Important to see kind of, that different people come from different home backgrounds. And if you have that entrepreneurial mother and father, how that's kind of ingrained in you. I'm curious, does anyone else have that entrepreneurial background?
Yeah, Molly, I'll just tell you, my dad actually raised me to be an entrepreneur. Told me every day, like, you don't need to go work for somebody else. There's lots of different ways to make money. And so it was just an incredible gift to just, have that be your foundation and your understanding that you can do more and you can try more. And so, yeah, that was my center.
I love that. And I kind of know a little bit about your background, and you've always had an entrepreneurial arm in something, I'm sure. How did you navigate kind of a corporate strategic placement and your entrepreneurial side wants?
Yeah, I spent 10 years in Omnicom, and that's Fortune 100, Fortune 500 company. And everybody that knew me, I had already started a couple of companies, and everybody that knew me said, well, you'll last 6 months. You're going to get fired for sure. And because, I loved being an entrepreneur and being able to be creative and come up with new things. And, that just happened to be a corporation that at the time understood how to get people to become an entrepreneur and to still, understand my value that I could bring. And I think that's all of our responsibilities. I learned that in that process. So, I probably couldn't have gone and worked at some of the more staid businesses, but that was a perfect way to look at what corporate America offered and what I needed personally at that time.
No, that's great. And I think that that's something that a lot of founders and entrepreneurs need to hear, that they can have a corporate job that supports them in that way, as well as working on things that kind of are making their other passions fueled as well. Lindsay, you're doing valuable work also. I'm curious, coming from such a credential-heavy background, how did you always feel like you had a desire to put something out in the world, or is this just something that made sense after you found a problem?
Yeah, ever since I was a little girl, always wanted to be a doctor. And so whenever I accomplished that and was in practice, I truly loved it. And I miss a lot about it now. But what happened, there were two things really that happened. Number one, my husband is a born entrepreneur, and he wormholed his way into my brain. And number two, I really in practice discovered that there was this really big and glaring problem with both actually on the patient side and actually on the healthcare provider side, where women had really zero available, easily accessible resources for sexual health. And when I made that realization, I looked around pleadingly, please, has anyone else done this? Surely someone's thought of this. No, there was nothing available. And then the options were really to leave practice and do this, or to turn it over to somebody else. And I'm very protective of my fourth child, Rosie. And so there was no way that I was ever going to let anybody else do it. And so I was really propelled to leap into the deep, dark waters of entrepreneurialism because of my mission, and because I firmly believe that it's sort of my purpose and care for women in this new way. And that just involves, learning a lot every day and taking a lot of risks and getting a on-the-job MBA. So here we go.
Heck yes. I mean, I think that that's a lot of people is getting that MBA on the job. I know working, Viraj is a great example, is putting yourself in the room with different people making things happen. Can you talk a little bit about how, your entrepreneurial journey has started and a little bit?
Yeah. I mean, the contrarian take is my dad was an entrepreneur. Not want me to be an entrepreneur at all. They wanted me to get a job. So that was pretty hilarious because I was like in my second year of school and I'm like, well, robotics is kind of cool, but after that, I think I'm just going to jump ship, drop out and start working on companies. Brown parents were not happy about that. But it's been interesting. I think, fundamentally, since I was a kid, I've always had a passion for building things. I thought that it was around coding and robotics and that was early on my passion, but I realized it was building things that people could use and they were happy about using and it impacted their life in one way or another. So that slowly turned into an obsessive passion. And then that's how I got into starting my first company, Fade. So I think, I was fortunate enough, even though it was a roller coaster of a ride and we ultimately ended up winding down the company, that the network I was able to build, the experiences that I was able to gain, and just, the ability to really exponentially increase my learning cadence became a superpower later on. So I'm happy about that. But yeah, I just stumbled into entrepreneurship. I worked as an early employee at a couple of startups, and then, one of my friends was getting a haircut in his bathroom, and the guy gave him a 6-pack for it, and we were like, oh, maybe we can turn that into a startup. So, yeah.
Hey, find a problem. There's a solution always, right?
Absolutely.
I love it, Martine. I know that you also kind of have that experience of working early stage large startups. But how has that impacted you?
Well, I think you're hearing a pattern here with a lot of these fine people in that it was both encouraged or around. My father encouraged entrepreneurship, but typical to more Viraj's experience, they also discouraged it. Ironically, because they wanted you to just have, a comfortable life. Don't take those risks. Why would you do that? That's crazy. And I'm sure all of us and many of you in the audience have been told by people that you love that you shouldn't do it because that's crazy. And that may not necessarily be the best advice you want to hear from the people that love you the most, but it gives you enough drive to do it. So when I think about where, I started my first job, I was cutting grass and cleaning pools when I was just a young teenager. And, that was a summer job turned into a fall job to pay, just pay for lunch and just do things, not ask my parents for money. But by the time college rolled around, I was still looking at other tools. I was part of that initial Facebook generation where you needed the college email. And I kind of turned that into a digital marketing, social media marketing agency. Before that was really a thing, 2008, 2010, walking into bars and restaurants and just convincing those people to let this kid run their Facebook because they had never really done that before. Hence, that's where, I got a chance to really work early on at Facebook, helping local businesses adopt these tools. And the rocket ship just became from that, that encouragement, brilliant people, hyper growth startup. Haven't really looked back, though I have waded back into the corporate world trying to work at corporations. But I have been also both told simultaneously I am unhireable, yet recession proof. And I think that's also part of the entrepreneurial journey, just adapting and growing and learning all the time.
I feel like that should be a headline somewhere. That's great.
That's my byline now.
Love it. Will, did you have that experience? Were you someone that was nurtured into entrepreneurship?
People have said around the table, I think resonates really well. I mean, I started my first company actually when I was about 12 years old. And I always thought that being a consultant would be a really sexy thing to do. So I started my own consulting company when I was 12 so that I could have that title from a really early age. I was working on neighbors' computers and setting up home networks and getting paid a lot better than my friends that were maybe cutting grass or doing other things. So I thought, this is great. I can work for myself and be in air conditioning. So that was kind of my first foray in entrepreneurism. I like Farhad. My parents then said, you actually need to go get a real job. We were paying me to go to school and you're going off the payroll. So you got to get out of here and get a real job. I did that for a long time. I thought I'd stay at McKinsey for a couple of years. I thought I might make it 18 months or maybe 2 years, and I ended up staying for a lot longer than that. But I kind of used that time to build a skill set that I thought was necessary to give me the background, the MBA that I needed in order to feel confident and comfortable when that opportunity came around to jump ship and start something. I wasn't ever planning to leave the firm when I did. I just, I think like a lot of things, opportunity kind of knocks at your door and you need to open up. So the kind of concepts behind Alto and some of the ideas that really were underpinning the company, I started building those things and got some interest from some investors, and all of a sudden, we had an opportunity to go attack it. And so, kind of on a whim, I told my wife, I think I'm done with this consulting thing. I'm going to go start a company. And she was like, that sounds scary, but yeah. And Martine said, I think talked to probably 20 of my closest mentors and friends who told me I'm crazy. Don't do that. That's a really risky and probably bad idea. But that was what created the drive for me to say, no, I want to go prove them wrong. I think that I'm uniquely positioned to do this, and I've been, kind of in the wings waiting to find that opportunity. So I think that's really my biggest takeaway from having, started now my first company. I'm definitely not a serial entrepreneur, and now that I know how hard it is, I'm not sure that I'll ever start something else. but I think that it's you have to be willing to take that first risk. And if it were easy, someone else would have done it. And if it were obvious, then it wouldn't be valuable. And so there's going to be a lot of people that tell you no, but if you can convince yourself that there's a real opportunity, then go give it a try.
Absolutely. I think that definitely resonates with a ton of people exactly in this position after they've kind of gotten through the steps 1, 2, and 3. But I'm curious to hear from all of you guys, and we'll kind of do that kind of same panel roundtable. What environments, when you're starting this company, what environments and what kind of people really were champions of you? Of course you have the people that are love and give you the real talk about, hey, that's scary and risk, but who did you surround yourself within, whether that's the company you're at currently or ones that have kind of started out at a foundational level? What environments, what type of people, what have they given to you as support that you now looking back think, oh man, it's instrumental. If I would have had that with this idea 10 years ago, it maybe would have fruited into something further faster. Does anybody have any ideas or thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think I can jump in here. With Pear and with her story, my journey really began with collaboration, whether that was collaboration with brands, collaboration with influencers, but understanding that others' perspectives, others' databases, others' ideas are going to launch your idea farther and more forward, and understanding that we're all stronger together. I think there's a huge misconception in the startup world with people looking in saying, all right, it's kind of like a dog-eat-dog world, right? I'm going to push you down and I'm going to get here, but it's quite the opposite. I mean, especially in Dallas, we've seen over and over again, it's so many incredible, both female and male entrepreneurs who have come behind me in my journey and said, I love what you're doing. We want to test this out. We want to do these experiences virtually when we had to pivot and could no longer have, pop-ups in person due to COVID. We want to be a part of her story. We want to put our brand out there. And not only do we want to be a part of it, but we want to support it and launch this out to our entire email database, and understanding that if I have, 100,000 emails in my email database and you have 200,000, we have 300,000 together, and we're supporting each other in that way. And so that's been really incredible. I think being in this startup world is understanding the idea of collaboration, and that the purpose is, in the end, all of our ideas are going to become something much larger if we can kind of get behind each other on them.
Yeah, I'd like to echo what Tinsley just said too. My second real company, because cleaning pools and and mowing lawns. I didn't incorporate any for that. It was just cash in hand. Little would I know even how to do that at 12, 13 years old. But my second company in my early 20s was a technology-based platform that allowed.
I don't have an LLC.
I'm like, yeah, it's awesome. But we started a tech-based platform that allowed event producers to better manage their events. It was basically a CRM that turned into a marketplace that allowed talent and vendors to connect, service providers. It was a really cool tool, but we only lasted about 18 months. Because my co-founder, myself, and our team were pretty young. We were just children managing other children. And we just thought we knew everything. We thought that we could do it alone. We could fake it till you make it, which to a certain extent can help you. But if you just go 100 miles an hour on the fake it till you make it, believe it or not, you probably have a tendency to fail faster and harder when you should say things like, I don't know. And after that company, we exited privately and just kind of broke even and repurposed the technology into a marketplace tool. However, what I took out of that from, the few mentors that I had, and all of the ecosystems throughout Texas at this time weren't really ecosystems. There was some proto co-working, in the early 2000s. There were things that there were places like from a corporate standpoint, entrepreneur accelerators that would help you, but nothing like the infrastructure we have now, which is marvelous. So if you're trying to start a company now, you're in an amazing position to do it. But just little as 7-8 years ago, that wasn't the case. So even when people are like, Martin, you got to go find yourself a mentor. I'm like, what's that? What does that mean? Right. But the ones that I did have, just said, dude, you need to just pump the brakes a little bit and just know when to say, I don't know. It's okay to not know all the answers. Nobody does, especially at the beginning of the journey, not even in the first maybe year or two of the journey. It's okay to constantly ask for help. And you'd be surprised how often when you say, I don't know, and are open for feedback, open for guidance, that those people who can help you will do it. People that are in mentor positions are really open to sharing that knowledge. They just want to know that if you're open to that coaching, if you're open to that feedback, if you're open to that growth. And if you can do that, especially if you're an early stage entrepreneur just thinking about starting a company, you're going to go a lot further than I did. And I've taken that as a real core tenet into all of the growth that's happened for everything, especially with our founders that come in on day one for FI. So I'd be curious to hear what everybody else thinks about that.
Yeah, it sounds like you did reach out for mentorship and things to people that you didn't know. Brian or Faraj, is there anybody that you can think of or resources, actual tangible places for people to reach out when they don't know? How have you guys handled that?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question and a nice segue too. When I first started off, I kind of was at college and kid with an idea who was trying to get a startup to viability. And, fundamentally, I think, I echo a lot of what Tinsley mentioned about, a culture of a rat race being there in Dallas then. It was very hard to break into the circle, and both access to education to understand what being a venture capital backable company and also access to capital were very limited for both founders of color and, female founders. And that's dramatically changed since then. And I think with Capital Factory coming in, the DEX, a lot of the hard work that they've done has cohesively created a really collaborative ecosystem. And we see that with our companies raising, seed, Series A, Series B rounds successfully and going toe to toe with a lot of the West Coast and East Coast startups. But, the one thing that I wish I knew back in my day, and that has been a huge accelerant for Canna versus Fade, is kind of unlocking the power of Twitter. Access to relationships and degrees of separation have become so small now. You're one tweet away from having a best friend on the other side of the world. And building my personal brand, networking with people from around the globe, and leveraging those warm introductions just from mutual relationships have led to us closing investors that I couldn't even imagine being in a room with before. So with founders that are starting off, I highly recommend checking that out. And if you really want to understand the fundamentals of building a company, Y Combinator Startup School program is incredible. I also highly recommend understanding the other side of the spectrum. Venture Deals is a really great course that helps you really get to know how VCs work and what their incentives and levers are. So that's what changed the game for me, and I think kind of helped me become a more sophisticated entrepreneur and pattern match what VCs want to listen to, while at the same time owning my entire narrative for the company we're building today.
No, I think that's great. And Yeah, I think it segues right into Brian. When I think about who in my network uses marketing to its full advantage, I think of you. And you know, I'm curious to see any resources or ways that you found throughout your, many years that have helped you maybe as a young person who didn't understand, and now as maybe an expert level, how do you pour back into the people that don't?
That's not where I expected it. As a young person and now as an old person.
Oh, that's not what I meant.
That's where I thought that was going. I was like, this is out of control. No. You know what? I love the things that were said, because the first thing that went through my mind was, if you're just willing to learn, and then it'll come to you. Like, there are people who want to share. And then the other thing is, if you'll ask for help, you'll find those individuals that want to help. And that's actually, when you specifically talk about resources, I think Faraj said a ton of great options for people. You know where I spent most of my time with? Clients. I tried to find those mentors and those people in client relationships. And so that was always, those kind of resources didn't exist when I was getting started. But that was a huge breakthrough for me, and totally self-serving. I don't mean to say this, but that's really what started Proxy, because I went through that process, and I was a serial entrepreneur and did it several times. And my partners and I looked at, how do we believe in small business. We believe in entrepreneurs and founders. And so we wanted to build a system that allows them to get the kind of support they need, and basically, a resource that they can go to that's a no risk situation where they can say, hey, I need some input on this. And they can get it from people who've been around the block a couple of times. So shameless plug, but my bigger point is, there's a whole bunch of people out there that have those great experiences that are in a position they want to help you.
Well, I think that's exactly why you're on the panel, because I do see you not necessarily with Proxy and just in general as a huge resource, but things like that, reaching out to consumers, looking at different platforms that you haven't. Twitter is something I'm, like you said, trying to manage and get a little bit more of a grasp on, surrounding myself, like Martine said, with people who give me an adult supervision, parameters, things to make sure it gets done. Well, I'm curious, within Alto, did you have that kind of support at the beginning stages? And forgive me, but how long has Alto been in existence?
Yeah, we founded the company in early 2018. I didn't, honestly. I think one of my biggest weaknesses as an entrepreneur was that I didn't know many others, that were starting companies, and that wasn't part of my network. As kind of somebody from corporate America for a long time, I knew a lot of people in Dallas, a lot of successful folks at big companies, but not a lot of folks that were doing interesting kind of small things, just getting started. I knew nothing about venture. I knew nothing about, I had no network in that space. And so the very first thing that I did really was exactly what Brian said, which is just start asking for help. I mean, I think that was what I learned so clearly in those early days, was that it doesn't really matter if you know anybody, because if you can just find one person to begin that kind of network. I wish that I had the Twitter network that Farhad does, because I've been trying for a couple of years now and only have like 300 people that will pay attention to me on that thing. But
I got you, man.
I was going to say, we're all going to break, and we're all going to go over to his Twitter handle and get that done.
We're going to make it happen.
Yeah, right.
Please, can you put your Twitter handle over in the chat, please?
I posted
Will and everybody.
People follow me. But the Twitter thing is a joke. I mean, it really is incredible. How you don't think of Dallas as necessarily a kind of an epicenter of venture, but there really is a lot going on, a lot of interesting things, and it really only takes that first person that you need to know. I think, for me, it was getting to know some of the people at Deck and some of the people at Capital Factory, and just beginning that kind of seeding of having conversations, calling long lost friends from high school or college that had started a company and said, hey, I'm doing something crazy and I could really use your help. And it's incredible, how many people will just say, yeah, absolutely. Like, I'd love to spend 30 minutes. In fact, literally in 10 minutes after this call or after this panel, the next thing that I'm doing is talking to another entrepreneur that called me out of the blue that we worked with 10 years ago and said, hey, Will, I'm leaving my job and I'm starting a company. I'd love to just, pick your brain. And I love doing that because I know that, the people that did that for me is really what made, the hardest part of this, getting started, building a network and having a peer group of people that that can empathize with everything that's going on in the very first few days and months and weeks of a company is really important.
I love it. This might be an interesting question. I'd love to hear from all of you guys. Is there somebody you've reached out to or has really wanted to seek out that maybe has given you a no? And how have you been able to overcome, and come back at you and go back at them? I'd love to hear more of the stories of kind of maybe the asks that didn't work and how they've impacted you just kind of resiliently moving towards the ones that are saying yes.
Yeah, Molly, if anybody on this panel hasn't heard no about 1,000 times more than they've heard yes.
Well, when I say no,
but the competition
I mean in
should be
terms
how
of
bad the no was. Like how bad was it? That's the...
I guess when I say there's been people that I have sought out that are big impact players that I have not been able to get through, right? These are people that I know are going to be synergized with me, ones that I know are going to love and want to support me, ones that I know are going to be people who are going to be champions of me once they get to know me and my product, right? But I know that there's probably going to be 2 or 3 gatekeepers, ways to get to those. I'm just curious on you guys, how, who maybe is that for you that you've gone through?
I got to share this story. It's fantastic. My first company was touchscreen kiosks in hotels. That also tells you how old I am. But basically, I was going around, I'm pitching this to everybody. And I mean, we had like really cool clients that were like, hey, we've never seen this kind of technology before. Yeah, we want to test this and play with it. And I went to a professional sports team who I'm not going to name here in Dallas. And I sat down in front of the CMO and I pulled out my laptop and I showed him how you can, you're in the hotel and you touch the buttons to get directions to these restaurants and things to do. And he goes, yep, I like it. How many you got? And I go, well, we have that one in Arlington right now. I didn't know any better. I was like, yeah, we got one. We'll have 2 next month. And he looks at me and he goes, do you know what the hell I do? And I was like, oh, I think so. I think you try and get butts in seats. And he was like, you got no idea. I can't be spending time with people like you that don't have enough scale to help out. And he just laid into me. And I sat there, and so this is, by the way, this is after I just said there's a lot of people out there that want to help you. This guy does not want to help you. But anyway, I went through that process, and I got to tell you, that put a fire in my belly for the next, 3-5 years, where I was like, I will be so prepared when I walk in that room, and I will understand their business well enough to be able to translate. And so anyway, it was a fantastic, plane crash on my part and a great no, because it gave me a lot of inspiration in the future.
That's a better way to phrase that question. What has been a great no from you that has put a fire in your belly? Ones that you keep thinking about, oh, they're right and wrong, I'm moving forward.
Raj, you got one. I know you
Yeah, I got plenty. So when I was actually raising money for Fade, I sent about 1,400 emails and I talked to about 295 investors. And all of them said no until I got to my first yes. That was a couple of years of hard work, but I think the one that really pretty much made me go insane was there's in the cannabis industry itself, there's really reputable, let's say fund. And I reached out to them and I looked at their portfolio, I looked at their thesis, and I really pattern matched. And it was a great idea for a company and for the stage that we were at. We were crushing it, and I got on a call and they set up the stage to where it looked like everything was going to go smooth. And long story short, one thing that especially founders of color hate is the fear of looking dumb. And the entire time he made me feel like I didn't know what my company was, ultimately ended in a rejection, or I ended up rejecting them because I said, this is not a fit at this time, and it was weird. He kind of was oh, you just don't know what's going on and blah, blah, blah. And all of this stuff. And, they're more focused on the cannabis state. Long story short, we ended up closing our pre-seed round, and, anybody and everybody who's in the South or, the Midwest that's in cannabis pretty much knows of us. So as they started to expand, into this area and started to talk. Like every call they would get on, they'd be like, "Have you heard of this like brown dude with a mullet in Oklahoma? His name's Farhad. This like company called Canna." And they hit me back again, and they were like, "Oh, we're starting this new program, and I think this might work with like your current, scenario, and we'll meet like whatever's going on." And I'm like, "Okay, I'll give him a chance. We'll see how it goes." I'm a guy who has a lot of positive vibes, and he did it again on an hour-long call, and I was just like, "Man, dude, honestly, like I don't have time for you, And I'm not gonna spend my energy to go any further with this, but like in Farhad's list, you're officially canceled." So it really ticked me off. But what was great is like because of his first no, I became so obsessive about becoming a subject matter expert in the cannabis space that I in our due diligence packet that we have for the company, there are materials that are so extensive in research and with respect to unit economics and growth strategy and everything that the other following investors who came on were just like, "What the hell motivated you to build this out? You're a pre-seed company, This is the first time I'm publicly sharing this, and if you hear this, I don't care. But it was great. It was one of the best no's that I've gotten. I'm really happy about it. Yeah, it was awesome.
Hey, and
I
it
think
worked out for the best, right? For you.
I was going to say, Molly, that I think that the best thing when you hear these no's, because like Will said, if any of us, we've all heard way more no's than we've heard yeses, both in all aspects of our business, but is to just demonstrate consistency. Like if it's someone that you care about is still in the future, like you're not writing them off like Faraj is this other terrible person, but you really want to pursue it and want to keep it on the radar, that you just add, like we do, like quarterly updates to all the people that told me no our first round. They're getting an update about all the milestones we're meeting, all the traction that we're gaining. And that way they can just see, hey, Rosie's a company that does what they say that they're going to do. And so the next time we meet, they have all that context and I don't have to, try to go backwards and prove that track record. So I think that if there is a no, but that's still something you want to pursue, there's a really sort of easy and low touch way to kind of keep those people in the loop.
That's great advice, Lindsay. Yes, and I definitely think that that's something people need to hear. Just because it's a no, you can play that to both places, whether it's putting a fire in your belly or, hey, I'm just keeping me in your ear, keeping you in my ear. Martine, I know that you work with a ton of people on benchmark programming and getting people set up for that funding. Have you seen, I'm sure that you've seen countless no's, but is there something that comes to mind?
Yeah, two things on that too, and like Lindsay touched on it really well just right now, is the updates. And a lot of things that early founders struggle with is the communication outwards. You're too siloed in, you're trying to get stuff done, and you forget that monthly update, or it can be like every 6 weeks or quarterly, just however you want to set up that cadence, but being consistent with that. And also cycling through those contacts. If you are consistent, I get tons of monthly updates from our founders, and I'm immediately replying back to them. This is amazing, great. I just met somebody. I want to make an introduction. But from the investor side, we've heard some really great tips that our community sources out. One of our directors in Austin, he's actually a past FI grad. He's raised $2 million to date, and has been told no hundreds of times. And he's currently going to raise another $5 million. He just started this month. And what he does is he does a 6 month or 6 week cycle. But if you haven't responded or interacted or even opened the email, because he's tracking all that, after about 6 months, he drops you off. And what happens is those people who are used to getting that cadence will be like, "Hey, what happened? Are you doing that?" It's like, "Yeah, well, you're not really responding. So I don't really feel like you should be getting this information unless you're interested. Are you interested?" And it flips the script on them now. Now it's like, "No, I'm giving you a no. Like you don't really, you're not engaging. You don't seem like you're really trying to help and support us." There are people that are more prioritized in my time that I would like to communicate with, and immediately they'll come back and say, I'm so sorry. Can we set up a meeting?" So it shows for you as a founder that you are consistent. That flash in the pan that maybe sometimes early on that you might show, it's like, can you really do it? You're showing that and demonstrating it, and it's very helpful from the long run. So I hope outside of a new T-shirt that we get for Startup Week, y'all take that tip as well, because I'm glad I want to wear a T-shirt on that. I've certainly experienced it as well as community building. When we were starting Founder Institute, 3.5 years ago. I have just been a serial entrepreneur, didn't really have a lot of recognition from a leadership standpoint in the community. And I reached out. I still have the spreadsheet, 200 different people to help us serve as mentors and early partners to set up. I kid you not, panel, audience, half of them ignored me outright, just didn't respond to the LinkedIn email or LinkedIn message, the cold email, whatever. And that's fine, right? Most of them are involved with the program now and will deny that to their grave. Another 60 or so, at least, replied a little bit. Is like, I don't know about this. I don't know about you. Good luck. That core 40 ended up being our initial mentor body. We now have over 250 mentors around the state, not just in, Austin and Houston, but all around the state. And what's been great is, we don't have to worry on that selling, but we had to, just like a founder, we had to deliver and show that this program was valuable, that it was serving a really good purpose, and those people came back. So you just be consistent in how you communicate, and if you do need to drop some people off the list, you can do that. You should do that, because they'll come right back, and then they'll deny it to their grave that they ever said no or ignored you, and you can just hold that in your back pocket for when you need that favor, right?
I love that, and I do think that all of you are providing a ton of value to your consumers, to your company customers. We've got about 7 minutes left. So to finish out this panel, it went by very quickly, but I'd really love to end off we talked about, you as an entrepreneur really kind of getting through the hard phases at first, trying to put people around you that really were supportive, that were mentors, that were really trying to give you the answers that maybe you didn't know you needed. And I'd love to hear from you guys now, where you're at in your business going forward and who you are looking to put around you in the next phases of your business. And as you do that, I'd love for you to, again, just kind of tell people who you are, where they can find you online, and if they wanted more information, where they can find that. Tinsley, did you want to start, and I'll just go through the line?
Yeah, sure. So for us, I have 2 companies I'm working with now. Most people during COVID were trying to take care of just one. I decided to add one more on top of it just for fun, because we're crazy entrepreneurs. But with Pair, where we're moving, being in the experiential marketing industry, it's so interesting during this time, because we obviously had to pivot experiences, doing pop-ups with Topo Chico and even Marcus, to virtual experiences and hybrid experiences with companies like the VA, and still moving towards with other companies we're working with as well, like Topo Chico. So really looking at partners right now who are able to enhance the experience, are looking to really connect in these hybrid event models and still be able to create a meaningful connection with their consumers, even though we can't physically all be present right now. And then with Her Story kind of being born out of COVID in order to support female-led small businesses, we're always looking for new female-led small businesses to support in our box. And so being able to have those curated luxury businesses who will actually be sold in our boxes, or these smaller businesses that are just getting started, that can be super deals with Her Story. If you own your own small business, if you have a friend who started their own business and needs that support, we're always looking for that. So I'll share my contact for people to be able to send that through. But it's been a really amazing mission, being able to work with all of these other female entrepreneurs who we're all struggling in our own way, whether it's retail or technology, and finding a way, like I said before, to collaborate and support one another during this time.
Yes, and I will say I've listened to one of your lives, and they are really, really great. I really encourage everyone to start following Tinsley and her companies there. She's doing some awesome things. Faraj, what about you?
It's been super exciting. I think, we're growing a lot faster than we expected, and we're building a lot of trust with the Oklahoma marketplace. I think the thing I'm looking forward to most is we're actually going live with the first iteration of Canning University in the spring. And it's we're working with one of the executive producers of Bong Appetit and Weedakit on Vice to kind of build that cannabis cultivation curriculum that translates directly into jobs. So as soon as someone gets a certification, we can send them to a job and them get real-time compensated experience and build their careers. What I'm most looking forward to, and I'm really passionate about this, is surrounding myself with entrepreneurs both at the earliest stages and later stages, who are kind of, figuring their own ways to go from 0 to 1 at every single phase. And, to kind of echo what somebody mentioned earlier, having that community has been so amazing because they're empathetic to the situation that you're in. And all of the times when you're like at your rainiest day, you can give them a shout and, talk to them about what's going on and wake up the next day feeling great and you just want to attack the day. So I'm super passionate about that. And if anybody wants to send me a cold deck, get brutally honest feedback in a very respectful way. And if I can make relevant intros to VCs and angels, I'm more than happy to be a resource. I guess like my last kind of like what I'd like to drop is one of the reasons I think our fundraise was so successful is early on, I kind of went with the strategy to where, I'm very intentional about the VCs that I talk to and I do very extensive research. But a lot of times I kind of set up the pace, to get to a no as fast as possible. And when I do, I instantly stop pitching my company and pitch 10 of my friends' companies who I already think is relevant to their thesis. So what happened is some of the investors invested in those companies. I got really good goodwill with them. They'd introduce me to their friends. And, there was this like spiraling network effect that happens where a lot of my friends got funded. Now they're moving on really fast. And, I'm getting funded. I'm moving on really fast. And we want to extend that goodwill to everybody else who was in our position, but don't have to spend the 2.5 to 3 years learning, making those mistakes and, losing out on time, energy, blood, sweat, and tears. So, I highly recommend getting involved with amazing organizations like Founders Institute, Capital Factory, The Deck, DivInc, a lot of amazing organizations who are driving change forward in Texas. And I'm super bullish on its startup ecosystem in the future.
No, and I think that you said something earlier that really made a point when you said, a sophisticated entrepreneur. I would echo that from you, that you really are sophisticated in the way that you have been able to quickly, like you say, get the things you need and give goodwill to others. And I really love that about you. So if you in the chat, guys, if you don't know how to connect with him, please reach out. He is a great resource for all entrepreneurs. What about you, Will? Is there anything you're looking forward to at Alto? Please tell us how we can see what's coming up for you guys. I know you have a ton of amazing things happening.
I was on mute. So yeah, it's a super busy time. It's been, the COVID impact on our business has been pretty dramatic, quite frankly. The months of April, May, and June were very challenging. Some of the most challenging months of my entire professional career. In many ways, also the most exciting because it was just absolutely, uncharted territory and things that we were trying to figure out new things every single day. We probably built more in those months, I would say, those 3 months than we kind of built the 3 years before in founding the company. So really exhilarating. And now we're on a, continued tear, I would say. We just opened, we've been in Dallas for 2 years now. We just opened Houston last week. Last Monday, we had last Friday, we had our first rides in Houston. Before this was working with our lawyer, setting up our entity in California. We're entering LA in late October and looking to kind of take the success that we've had here in Texas and here in Dallas and expand it to several other cities around the US and hopefully in the next couple of years around the world. So we're always looking to expand the team, in particular in those new cities. We're hiring pretty rapidly to have folks join us and help lead those geographies. So if there's anybody in here that's a transplant from Dallas living in LA or other parts of California, holler at us. We're hiring like crazy there. We stood up in Houston, but that will be growing really quickly as well. So the rest of 2020 looks pretty exciting and we're excited about the continued challenges.
Man, I'm excited for you guys. Will, your cars are great. Your company the experience is always amazing. So I'm really excited to see you grow globally. That's going to be so exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. Amber asked in the chat if Fort Worth is on the list. I should even mention it. Fort Worth we're open in Fort Worth. We actually serve the entire DFW Metroplex. So everybody from Denton County down to southern Dallas and east and west, to Fort Worth, and then also well into Rockwall now. So we can if you're on this video, you're probably living in a place where you can call it Alto.
Love it. Yes, ridealto.com. It's great. I love it. Thank you, Will. Martine, well, we'll go from you and quickly, and then we'll finish out with Miss Lindsay. Martine, is there anything with Founders Institute? I know that we are so excited to hear what's going on there.
I guess we can share it with just between us and 100 of our closest friends. So FI's coming to Dallas in early 2021. We'll start sessions in mid-January 2021. Really looking forward to introducing the community what the program's about, as well as some stellar leaders that have been involved with Startup Week. You'll get to know them very soon if you're not already looking at them right now. And you'll get to learn more about what we're about. So if you're looking to start a company, or if you have an MVP or prototype and still need to build out everything else that is a company, just follow some of that information I just dropped in the comment box. We'll be hosting a series of events throughout the rest of the year featuring local startup entrepreneurs, mentors, and investors in the community. And, we're excited to be expanding the mission throughout the state because we see that us as a collaborative state is proving to raise the tide for all ships. So looking forward to that and hoping to connect more with all of these fine people that were joining me on this panel. So cheers, everybody.
Yes, I'm excited as well. I'll make sure to send out those Founder Institute links as well. Brian, I didn't miss you, I promise. I'm sorry. Please share with me.
Go ahead,
I said you and then Rosie. Lindsay, did you want to go? And we'll have Brian finish out for us.
Sure, yeah. I think the people that I love to surround myself with are people like y'all, people who are excited about starting new stuff, like the people who are watching and attending today. And really when we're building our team, that's sort of what we're focused on is growth mindedness. We don't know most things, but we sure can learn anything. And that's the kind of attitude that I love. For Rosie in particular, we're super excited about growing the app. We've so far created the largest ecosystem around women's sexual health that exists, both in terms of user volume and in terms of number of providers that are recommending and who are creating content for the platform. So that in and of itself in 18 months is so exciting. And, we're just thrilled to be doing things that have never been done before, to be erasing shame and isolation for women around the country about topics like sexual pain. We just launched a class yesterday in the app that's free for survivors of sexual trauma. So it's just so wonderful, like that I get to take these wonderful investors' dollars and create this output every single day. And I'm so thankful for that opportunity, honestly, and to just keep it going. So I'm going to drop the link to Rosie in the App Store for everybody to download. And we're just all about connecting women with evidence-based intervention. So we're just going to keep doing that.
Yes, and so needed. You are definitely a huge, impactful company here in Dallas, and I'm so excited to see your growth nationwide and hopefully out into the world as well.
Thank you.
Yes, and Mr. Brian, please share with us any of your last additional thoughts.
Yeah. So Lindsay took my line because I was just going to say who we'd like to surround ourselves with are the people on this panel, but we refer to them as challenger executives. When I hear Will talk about what they had to have gone through, during this time in COVID, but you find inspiration, you find opportunity, you continue to move forward, and you find that you can do it better than you did before. So we love companies and CEOs that they know they're going to be faced with adversity. They just want somebody to help them through that process. So that's one side of it. And then we surround ourselves with servant leaders, people who have had great professional experience, but now they're in a position where they want to be able to work from home, which we all do anyway, but work from home, and they want to be able to give back, and they want to help entrepreneurs. And so, we basically are a marketplace that brings those people together. And so, it's been a really exciting time for Proxy. If you want to check us out, we're remotechiefofstaff.com. But yeah, it's a really fun process being able to help great people like the folks that are on this call.
Yes, and I know Proxy is really making a huge impact in tons of businesses right now. So I'm so excited that you were able to be here with me today. And like you said, these people in the chat, I want you to know that these founders and entrepreneurs truly embody servant leadership. They are ones that have poured out mentorship to me and have been hugely impactful in my life. So I really appreciate, again, to the panel, thank you so much for taking the time today. I will make sure to get the link to YouTube to you all. This will all be live on, or I'm sorry, be reshared on YouTube for you guys. And if there's any other additional thoughts or questions, I'd like to close it out.
Thanks for having us. This is awesome.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for being
Thank
here.
Molly.
you. Thanks,
job.
everyone.
Great job, Molly.
You guys are great. Thanks so much.
See you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.